last few weeks, I've had quite a few people ask me the question, what is the difference between a sketchbook and an art journal? And it's a really interesting question. So I thought in today's Friday Art, I would address it in my way. How you use your sketchbook and your art journal is entirely up to you. It's a very, very personal thing. For me, an art journal tells its own story. So, for example, I've got this one, The Soft Hours of Winter, and the whole journal has a cohesion about it. There's a kind of story that runs right the way through. And I work on my journals over several weeks, sometimes months, and there is a story, as I say, that goes right the way through. So this one has a collection of poems and little sketches, but there's this neutral tone all the way through. And same with my winter journal, which is a walk in the woods. So the whole journal is just a travelling through the winter landscape with some words, some poetry, some prose, some quotes, that sort of thing. The same with this one, Under a Fabulous Sky, just being inspired by the landscape around me and being totally fed up with rainy weather. It was mainly my reason for doing this one, which is not finished, as you can see, but there are various elements in it that are repeated. And so for me, a journal has a cohesion, it tells a story. So what about a sketchbook? I have been an art teacher for a very long time, and when I teach a class, whether it's in school, in college, whether it's an adult class, a children's class, I do demonstrations, and I keep my demonstrations in my sketchbook. And this means that my sketchbook does not have a cohesion at all. It might do, so I was doing a lot of collage with this particular in this particular season, but there's going to be a whole mixture of different things in this sketchbook. So there will be things that are unfinished, things that have barely been started, little kind of things that I've written down, stuff when I'm working on books and things like that. But some very scribbly, unfinished things, the sort of start of projects. Nothing is finished in these sorts of sketchbooks. I'll just show you the one that I'm using at the moment. So this was that one was from last year. This one is from October last year. Again, it's going to be ideas, demonstrations, the start of things, and some of these ideas I will take further. I did like that. Was just such a fun. That was such a fun thing to do. If you haven't checked out this video and you want a bit of a laugh, look at Crazy Fish, because it was great fun. Anyway, I've kind of digressed. Anyway, so this is what I'm saying. From Crazy Fish to muted doodle landscapes, you can see that my sketchbook is very eclectic. This is how I work, and I refer back to my sketchbooks over and over again. And I've been a teacher for a very long time, so I have sketchbooks going back 20, 30 years. And I love them. I like the fact that they are tactile. I can touch them and I can remember what I'm doing. So sometimes when I'm not sure of what I'm doing, which can be quite frequently, did like Lion was fun. I can go back to it and think, yes, what was I doing there? How could I develop this for another lesson in the future? That sort of thing. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to do a page in my sketchbook, sort of based on a lesson that I'm going to be doing in the next week. And I'm going to do a page in an art journal. And then you can take any of these sorts of techniques and do your own thing with them.
Hello and welcome to Friday Art with me, Kate Field.
I release art tutorials every Monday and Friday, and a little wandering in the middle of the week. I am so pleased you are here. Welcome if you are new. So I really hope you're going to enjoy this and you're going to get some ideas for both your sketchbook and your art journal. Are you ready? Let's go. I'm going to start in my sketchbook. So last week I did these little landscape pieces in watercolor and acrylic pen. If you did watch it, you will see that I was a bit manic last week, and oh my goodness, yeah, lots and lots of things were going on, and subsequently lots of things went a little bit wrong, and I never got around to finishing anything. So I finished off a few of these ideas because I wanted to do this in an adult class, and so these are going to be put into a double page, maybe 2 double pages of my sketchbook, and I will write some notes of what I did, how I did them, and what I used. If it's something that I wouldn't normally use, I would definitely write down what I used, but these I use a lot. But you'll get the idea. So I'm going to put those in my book. Sometimes I'll put the date, often I don't, because I kind of know where I am in my sketchbooks. But you might like to put dates in, and for my students, my older students, I definitely encourage them to put dates in, because they will then see their progress, because this is what it's all about, really. The more you do, the better you get. So I'm just going to move these around. It was great fun doing this, but I do apologise for it being slightly bonkers. And if you were new to the channel, oh my goodness, yeah. Anyway, if you haven't checked that one out, you might like to just have a bit of a laugh at me going just very slightly crazy. So I'm going to stick these into my sketchbook. They're going to go on that page. I'll probably do 2 pages. Let's move over here. And now this page is going to be something completely different, because I'm going to be working on playing with colour, creating textures with acrylic, and that's what I'm going to be doing for next week's lesson. But I'm going to show you how I started off with my own ideas. So for this, I'm going to be using acrylic paint. I've got a couple of soft brushes, decorator's brush, bit of cardboard, and I'm going to be doing some mark making just directly using the paint. Now, the whole point of this is to encourage my students to be more playful, to try new things, be a bit brave, but also to work quickly. So that's the whole point of this one. So we're going to start off by just putting up some paint, some yellow paint, onto the page with the decorator's brush. We're not thinking about it too much. We're just putting it on. I'm leaving some space. I'm going to be using that in a moment. I'm not using any water with this at the moment. The thing with working in a sketchbook is not to create something that's beautiful. It's to play with an idea. And if you have that in your mind, any mistake you make, in inverted commas, is a step forward, because you are learning what works and what doesn't work. And I say this to my students all the time. You have to embrace the errors, because it's when we make mistakes, when we allow ourselves to make the mistakes, that is when we learn. When we just stick with stuff that we know, we don't grow creatively. You have to we have to come out of our comfort zones a little bit. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I'm now putting in paint. I'm definitely going neon at the moment because I'm fed up with the weather. So fed up with kind of grey, and I just need a bit of neon in my life. So I hope you don't mind. Let's. So like I said, this has been triggered by some messages that I've received, and thank you so much for everyone who takes time to comment on the videos, but also those of you who have joined my Patreon or who are in the Facebook groups, and again, you take take time to contact me, or through my newsletter. If you'd like to be part of any of those, the links are below. The Patreon is quite new, so there's only a few of us on there, but it's really, really lovely community. The Facebook groups are just phenomenal. They are just such lovely, friendly spaces. So you can see I'm starting to put in some marks. I'm still just using these two colours. I've got a bit of a splodgy bit there, but definitely not going to worry about that. Let's just put in these. And this is one of the things where I say to the students, especially younger ones, you know, what happens when we put neon pink over the top of bright yellow? What happens to the colours? And this is just such a brilliant way for them to really have an understanding of colour. And I'll also kind of talk about, you know, how do these colours make you feel, that kind of thing as well. So I could say that to you as well. How do these colours make you feel? They might feel, oh my goodness, they're far too bright, I need to go and have a lie down. That's a perfectly acceptable response. But I know that there are quite a few of you out there who do love a bit of neon. So I'm not going to wash this brush with water, I'm going to use a rag. So I want to continue to use this brush, and I don't want it to be too wet. I don't want the paint to be wet at all. So I'm just taking off most of that paint with the rag, because what I'm going to go now is going in with this green. Now this has got a slight metallic tinge to it. I was doing a workshop with an art club that I go to regularly, once a fortnight, in Axminster, which is very near to where I live in Devon. And we were talking about metallics. Well, I'd got out some paints actually, and someone sort of said, oh, is that a metallic? It was a turquoise, metallic turquoise. Oh, it's gorgeous. Oh my goodness, they were all like magpies. But I'm sure it's because of the weather. It's like, oh, shiny thing, shiny paint. So this has, I'm not sure whether you can see that on the camera, but a very slight metallic tinge to it, which is rather lovely actually. So just putting these three colours on until most of the page is covered. There's a few white spaces. We're going to use that space in just a moment. So just put those on there. Just using the brush very lightly. I'm actually doing this standing up. If you are able to stand when you do this sort of work, it does give a different sort of energy. So if you can do it, I would recommend you give it a go. Just moving that like that. So we now have a very, very colourful double page, and I'm now going to clean my brush again, just on the rag. And now I'm going to introduce white. This is just white acrylic, nothing fancy. And I'm just going to do some marks over the page. Just a few bits of white. You can't see it too much. Just a little bit. I just want to kind of see what colours are going to be helpful in the class. There we go. Just putting in a bit like that. Now I am going to leave this to dry completely. So while I'm doing that, let's go back to my art journal. So I thought I'd show you a little journal that I started a while ago and I've been doing on and off. I've called it Sky Above Ocean. As some of you know, I live by the sea in southwest England in Dorset, and I'm always inspired by the landscape. And so I've done this sort of little series of tiny watercolours with a view to writing some poetry and things like that. So I thought I would just kind of show you my process of how I start to put things together, and how I can change things around if I change my mind, because we are allowed to change our minds. So I've got a few pieces that I've done over over several months, maybe even several years, that I think might be quite useful. And I particularly like these sort of greys, and I think that this is going to be what I'm going to use. So again, this would have been an experimental piece, maybe from a few years ago, I think, maybe when I was teaching A-level. And I just love some of these textures. And when I'm thinking about the sea and the sky and the landscape where I live, it can change all the time. You know, it can change in the course of a day, as those of you who live by water will know. That's, you know, just is what happens. So I'm just going to use this little bit of time to play around with some ideas. There's going to be spaces left because I want to do some writing. I might write on the actual pieces. I might write on the black. I might print out some words. I'm going to show you those as well. But this is very small. But I've just kind of started to write on there. But you can kind of see that there is a bit of a theme. It's not like a story, although some of my pieces are stories. And when I teach creative writing and art journaling together, we often get this combination, which I absolutely love. It's just glorious. And there might be a few pages where I think actually what I've stuck down is a bit boring, like there's not very much going on there. So I think I'm going to start with this one. So I'm going to start, so this is just watercolour paper, and I've got some watercolour paints here. You could use whatever you like, but I particularly want these sort of more muted colours. And I'm going to start off by doing a horizon, just one kind of line of the watercolour. And if it goes onto the black, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to fade this out so it's darker on the horizon. I think I'm just going to leave it like that, actually. I think that works really well. This one, I like these storms. I like what's going on there. And I feel that this could be, there's a bit of a landscape feel coming on this. So I'm going to do a bit of land coming out. So where I live in West Dorset, the shoreline is very jaggedy. It's just amazing, actually. That's a little bit too green. Although the sea is a very kind of dark grey green today. So maybe I'll do that kind of dark grey. Then we've got a little bit of a landscape going on. So you can kind of see the ideas. Now what I'm going to do is just leave that one to dry for a moment and have a look at what I've got here. And I like this because it looks a bit like storm and the surf rising up. So I'm going to definitely use that bit. I'm going to tear them rather than use scissors because I like that jaggedy edge. And I will put that on another page. I'll definitely keep that one. And then what I'm going to do is to think about my words, lines of poetry, that kind of thing. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to come back and show you what I do with that at the end. But let's go back to the sketchbook. So I've come back to this. This is all dry now while I was doing the other little journal. And I'm going to use some bits of cardboard. I like this one because it's got a very gorgeous edge. And I'm going to be introducing a new colour. I'm going to have some dark navy blue. And I'm going to use a brush for the moment, just to put a little bit of paint on the edge of this piece of corrugated card. And then I'm just going to put some marks on the page. You could do this while the underpainting is still wet, but I think you get a better effect if it's dry. So that's quite fun. Little bits of cardboard is really good. And the other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to be using a fat marker pen. And we're going to take some of these spaces and do some lines. So I'm just going to make some quite kind of dramatic type lines. And I think this is where when we can be a little bit experiment focused is good. It's a good thing. We can do this in our sketchbook because who else is going to see your sketchbook? You know, it's for you. It's for you to play with some ideas. I'm going to leave that bit to dry as well. I'm going to grab another bit of cardboard. It's got a piece here. Oh, that's gone a bit wonky. It's going to start to tear some of this off. So I do like this texture. I want to use a bit of that. I'm going to stick with that blue. Let's just put a bit of blue acrylic on there, and then just start to put some textured lines. I think where you have dark colours over the top of bright neon, get some very interesting marks. So next thing I'm going to do is just dunk it in there, so there is quite a bit of paint on there. You can always remove some of it if you want to, or just see what happens. So just putting these different marks onto the page and just enjoying it. As always, because often we don't allow ourselves to play. I'm now going to pick up a bit of pink on there, which will mix with the blue. I haven't cleaned it, so it will go a bit purpley. Let's just have a bit on here. Now, I'm not trying to create anything in particular, but I could. And this is the thing. These sorts of textures and backgrounds might start putting some ideas into your head. So you might think about like an urban landscape, for example, might pop into your head. And you think, that would be a really good background to do a landscape of a town or a city or something like that. But also, if you want to just create an abstract piece, and you think, I like that combination of different textures with different colours, just seeing how it all kind of comes together. Now I'm going to leave this to dry, because I'm going to go over the top now with a white marker pen, but I do need to have that all completely dry. I've made a nice mess, which is all good, and I'm going to go back to my journal. So here we are. I've started to put in a few of those other extra bits, and I've started to write a few little poems, little haiku, tiny poems. They're probably not true haikus, actually. I didn't count all the syllables. But I do like tiny poems where you're trying to capture a mood really quickly. So with like this one, the morning wind arrives with pockets full of cold light. The sky shrugs and clears. I quite like that. I might use that in the future. The same with this one. I like the idea of tiny little poems. If you do like creative writing, on my Patreon, every Tuesday I have the writer's table, which you are very welcome to come and have a look at, where I give lots of prompts and ideas for storytelling. I've also got lots of stuff on my freebies page on my website. I will put a link both to Patreon and to the Facebook groups and to all the freebies. You can just help yourself and choose what you'd like to do. So also on Patreon are art courses and art prompts. Saturday morning sketchbook prompt is quite popular as well, which is really nice. My Patreon is very new, so there's not many of us on there yet. You might also like to join the Facebook groups, which are amazing. Anyway, so that's where I am with this little journal. I've got some more ideas of how I might write some more poems, or perhaps even a story. Did a little bit more on these. And then just coming to the end. These are more like kind of trees, so I'm going to work on those over the next few weeks, I think, and see where that might go. So let's finish off with some white. I'm just using a white marker pen, acrylic pen, and I'm just going to do some circles in white. It just adds another layer of texture. Remember that in art, texture, when we use the word texture, which is one of the formal elements, we don't necessarily mean something that is actually rough or smooth. What we are talking about is the impression. So it might well be rough or smooth, for example, but it could just be the illusion of that. And we can use our mark making to create texture, and that in some very, very exciting ways. And because this is my sketchbook, I can scribble on it, I can change my mind, I can write notes, I can make notes of what I've used, and I can also write things that I think are going to work in a class, or things that I'm going to do in my own private work, because I've got a couple of exhibitions coming up this year, so that's exciting. So yeah, lots of scribbly bits. There was still some paint that wasn't dry, but hey, that's fine. I better clean that one up before I put the lid back on it. So that's where I am with my sketchbook. Let me just turn the page, because I did start to put these ones in, as you can see, my quirky villages and my beach huts. So I put them onto a black card, see what they look like. They're quite fun. This one I will do a bit more on. I've changed some patterns, but I will leave you with this kind of explosion page. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this one, and that you have got ideas for both your journal and your sketchbook, and you've got a better idea of how you can use both. I would love to know what you think. As always, I read every single one of your comments, because you are just so lovely, and I so appreciate you so much. If you'd like to see some more, look at this one up here, because I think you're going to like it, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.